In this video, I will demonstrate how to effectively cool an overheated engine. Step 1. If your engine is overheating, don't panic, pull over as soon as it's safe. If the temperature gauge is in the red or you see steam, slow down and find a safe place to stop. White clouds from the engine are steam, not smoke, so you have some time to pull over. If you can't stop immediately, turn off the AC and open the windows to reduce engine strain. Increase the heat and fans to draw heat from the engine. Use your hazards and drive slowly, reducing RPMs and avoiding uphill driving until you can stop. Step 2. Once the steam stops, pop the hood if the car isn't too hot. If the hood is extremely hot or steaming, wait until it cools before opening it fully. Opening the hood helps dissipate heat from the engine. Turn off the engine but keep the key in the on position to let the cooling fans run and aid in cooling. Allow the engine to cool completely, which may take 30 to 45 minutes, before touching the engine or opening the radiator cap to avoid burns. Step 3. Check the upper radiator hose to gauge if the system is still under pressure. If the hose is firm and hard to squeeze, the system is likely pressurized, and you should not remove the radiator cap. If the hose compresses easily, it is probably safe to remove the cap. Always use a rag or towel when handling the hose, as it can be very hot. Step 4. Keep the radiator cap on until the engine is cool to avoid dangerous steam and fluid bursts. Even if the cap feels warm, leave it on. Coolant can reach 260 degrees Fahrenheit and will flash boil when exposed to air, potentially causing severe burns. Wait until the system has fully cooled before removing the cap. Step 5. Carefully turn the radiator cap using a thick towel or rag. This will expose the fluid to the atmosphere. If the cap lacks threads, press down on it after loosening to disengage the safety lock before removing it completely. Step 6. After the engine has cooled for 30 to 45 minutes, check the coolant reservoir tank. It looks like a white plastic jug connected to the radiator cap and usually has a level mark indicating the proper fill level. Step 7. Check for leaks in the engine, as coolant system leaks are a common cause of overheating. Look for fluid on the engine, pooling under the car, or low coolant levels. Even a small leak can cause issues because cooling systems require pressure to function. Coolant, which typically smells sweet, can appear on hoses, under the car, or around the radiator cap. It flows more like water compared to the thicker consistency of oil and is often green in older models, though its color can vary by vehicle make and model. Step 8. After the car has cooled for 30 to 45 minutes, refill the coolant. Open the radiator cap and add a small amount of coolant, or mix coolant and water in roughly equal parts and pour it in, as most engines require a 50-50 mixture. In an emergency, water can temporarily substitute for coolant, but it should not be used long-term. Step 9. After the car has cooled and you turn it back on, check the temperature gauge. If it rises into the red zone again, turn off the car and wait another 10 to 15 minutes to cool down. If the gauge remains normal, you can continue driving until you reach a mechanic. Step 10. Call a tow truck if the problem persists or if you notice serious issues like coolant leaks, oil dripping, or an engine that won't cool down. Overheating can severely damage the engine and potentially total your car. If you must drive, let the engine cool as much as possible before restarting. Step 11. After the temperature gauge drops, avoid driving for long if possible. Sometimes, you may need to keep driving until you reach help. If the car doesn't overheat again, the issue might have been a one-time occurrence due to factors like the AC being on or hot weather. Continue monitoring the temperature gauge to prevent further problems. Most cars are designed to detect overheating before significant damage occurs, but it's important not to ignore the gauges. Step 12. Turn off the AC to reduce strain on the engine, as it uses engine power to cool the car. Instead, open the windows to cool off the interior. Step 13. Turn the heat up to full blast to help cool the engine, as the heater pulls heat from the engine and blows it into the car. This might make the cabin uncomfortable, so direct the vents toward the windows or use the defroster setting to avoid blowing hot air directly on you. Step 14. Crank the heat up to full blast to help cool the engine, as the heater draws heat from the engine and blows it into the cabin. This can make the interior uncomfortable, so direct the vents toward the windows or use the defroster setting to avoid hot air blowing directly on you. Step 15. Put the car in neutral and rev the engine to around 2000 RPM to help circulate air and coolant more quickly, which aids in cooling the engine. This can be especially useful in stop and start traffic to help keep the engine cool. Step 16. If you're out of coolant, you can add water to the radiator as a temporary measure to keep the engine cool. Use warm water and only add it after the engine has cooled, as cold water can cause cracks in the engine block due to the sudden temperature change. Step 17. If you need to drive with an overheating engine, drive for short distances, then pull over and turn off the car to let it cool for 10 to 20 minutes. Monitor the temperature gauge closely, and repeat this process to avoid causing severe engine damage. Step 18. Drive slowly and steadily rather than frequently stopping and starting in traffic, as this can stress the engine and lead to overheating, especially in older cars. Let your car roll forward gradually and check the temperature gauge regularly at red lights and stop signs. Step 19. Use the windows to cool the car instead of the AC, as the AC puts extra strain on the engine. Turn off the AC immediately if you're overheating and avoid using it if you're concerned about potential overheating issues. If you're running late, have radiator leaks, unresolved AC problems, or low coolant, it's best not to use the AC at all. Step 20. Change your oil regularly and have your fan checked at the same time, as old oil can contribute to overheating, especially if there are other issues like low coolant. When getting an oil change, ask mechanics to inspect the fan to avoid costly repairs later. You should hear the fan whirring after turning off the car, as it continues to cool the engine. Step 21. At the start of summer, top off your coolant by checking the reservoir levels and adding a mixture of equal parts coolant and water if needed. This is crucial in hot climates. While checking, also look for leaks, as coolant is usually green, smells sweet, and can be found under the car, around the engine, and on hoses or radiator parts. Step 22. Keep an emergency kit in your car for overheating issues to avoid being stranded. A preparedness kit can ensure your safety and help you manage until you can reach a mechanic. You should pack extra coolant, a gallon of water, a toolkit, a flashlight, non-perishable food, a blanket, a straight razor blade, duct tape, Phillips and flat head screwdrivers.